This is what you should feel. You are what you should feel.
So this is an escalation of activity which actually began last fall, when I felt like I was being watched while walking my children to the bus stop in the morning. I'm fairly used to spoopy stuff, so I generally don't get in a kerfuffle easily. As of the spring, this observant presence began imitating my closest pets, which I was later relieved by finding out my significant other and teenage son had both noticed, and we had each assumed we were losing our minds. We have each heard the distinct, recognizable voice of one of our animals, only to have them be sleeping in our house, or walk up and make it awkwardly obvious that it definitely wasn't them. I only went looking for my pet the first time, and while looking, I got the distinct feeling that it was not my pet, and to get my ass in the house. So we always search the house before assuming someone escaped now. Since then, at times when I hear the calls, I get a chill because it sounds like my pet, but it doesn't feel like my pet, if that makes sense. This happened last night. I have no way to confirm my SO's account, aside from the security camera in the bedroom showing where I actually was and when, including when they called my phone. So I woke my SO up after he fell asleep on the couch, told him to come to bed around 4 a.m. So he's like, cool, I'll be right there. I go ahead upstairs. He calls for me a couple of minutes later, and I don't answer. So he calls my phone twice, and I answer the second time. I was sound asleep. According to the bedroom camera, I had been asleep for nearly an hour at the time he interacted with me. He was extremely unsettled once he realized I had been sound asleep. I've also informed my teen that if he hears me calling for him when he knows I shouldn't be home, not to answer and text me instead. So this happened in December or late November 2020. I was a few minutes late for college, and my mum was with me. However, when I arrived, the fire alarm had gone off and everyone from the main building had evacuated. I didn't know if my building had evacuated, so I went across the road and in the main entrance asked a staff member what was going on. He told me that it was just the main building that evacuated and not mine. So I went upstairs and went to my class. Later on I spoke to my mum, and I can't remember if she messaged me or if she told me this when she met me after college, but she asked where I went at the start of the day. I asked what she meant, and she said she saw me walking outside towards another building instead of going to class. She said they had the same bag, clothes, hair, height. They were literally identical. I told her I went to class, and she didn't really believe me at first. But I know I went to class, and eventually she believed me. She probably thinks it was just some strange lookalike, but she doesn't know about doppelgangers and mimics. And after reading some stories on here, and other paranormal posts on Reddit, I'm sure it was something paranormal my mum saw. To make it scarier, I know from folklore that seeing a doppelganger of yourself usually meant you were going to die. However, I didn't know what it meant if someone else had seen your doppelganger. So I searched it up, and it means that the person a doppelganger was impersonating is or will become very ill. I've had health issues all my life, but never anything serious like a disease, and I didn't have any I knew of at the time. However, just a week ago, I found out I have gum disease, and it has been causing me to feel nauseous and to have pain in my stomach as well as a sore mouth. I had to go to an emergency appointment with my local dentist. I know that the disease is due to natural causes. However, the fact that my mum seeing the doppelganger meant I was going to be ill is just too much of a coincidence. Due to my OCD, I regularly see hallucinations, and had I had seen it myself, I would think it was a hallucination. However, because my mum saw it, I believe her, because she doesn't have a mental illness, she doesn't do drugs, and hasn't even smoked in over 20 years. She also wasn't drunk, and is not the type of person to make something up. Edit. Someone in the comments told me to add this to the story, so I am. We were not wearing uniforms, because if so, then they could have been someone that just looked like me. We wear our own clothes, and I was wearing a random jacket, some outdated Adidas shoes, and a retro 1980s bag. Also, not many people look like me, and I've never seen someone else at my college that looks like me. Never mind wearing the same random clothes. My mum followed them because she was so sure it was me. However, she lost sight of them. Also, I know the doppelganger didn't cause me to have gum disease. I just thought it was a strange coincidence that I had an illness so soon after the encounter with potentially a doppelganger, and that it predicted it. Like I said though, it was probably just a coincidence. So I first have to explain the story as best I can. Basically, my family and I moved into this house a while ago. Maybe like 8 years or so. But ever since we moved out, my family swears they keep seeing things around the house. I've actually moved out with my boyfriend not that long ago, but I still visit very often. Very specifically, my family thinks they see a ghost around the house that looks exactly like me, and it's freaking me out. I know it's not me that they're seeing, because the times where they see this ghost don't make sense, and sometimes I'm not even at home. It's happened a couple of times, but I'll just write down a few examples. The first time it happened, I was playing on my computer in my parents' room when I noticed my mum walked down the hallway to my room. She called out my name, and I asked her what's up. She came out really confused because, according to her, she had followed me all the way from the kitchen into the closet in my room. When she got to the closet, there was no one there. I had been on the computer the whole time. I was even on it when I saw her pass her room to go into my own. When she told me this, it really freaked me out. And I just told her I didn't want to keep talking about it. I get scared super easily. The second time, I was helping Mum out with groceries. She was in the garage, bringing bags in, and I was in the kitchen putting everything up. While I was putting something up, she came in all mad, saying that she was struggling to get some bags, and I was just standing beside her, watching her struggle. But that wasn't me. Apparently, I was watching her struggling to pick up some bags from the truck floor. And when she turned around to ask me for help, I just stared her down. Again, that really scared me. Another time, my dad was telling me about something that happened when he was taking care of my sisters while my mum and I were out. Now, my dad does not believe in any kind of ghost or supernatural thing, but apparently, while taking care of my sisters, my dad heard what sounded like someone trying to open the sliding door that leads to the backyard. He immediately got up and went to check on the door to make sure no one wanted to break in or something. But when he got there, the door was shaking by itself very violently. It looked like someone was trying really hard to open the door, and had the lock stick been on the other side to keep it closed, the door would have slid open. It stopped about a few seconds after when my dad got there. Even my dad got scared, and I've never seen him this freaked out before. My two little sisters also heard the door. Now, I had personally never had a supernatural experience in the house, but the first few weeks before I moved out, I was home alone. I was taking a shower and I heard a huge bang. It sounded like the front door had been swung open, and then after that, it started sounding like someone was opening and closing doors and cabinets. I was so scared because it sounded like someone had broken into the house. I was defenseless, and in the freaking shower. So I got out of the shower, grabbed my phone, and called my mum, crying. All the while, doors and cabinets were still opening and closing. My dad got onto the cameras that they have in the house, and they didn't see anyone. There was no one in the house, and nothing was being moved around. It stopped after my dad said that through the phone. Those are some of the examples of what goes on. It terrifies me to think that one day I could possibly be staring right at someone who looks exactly like me in the middle of the night. I've never seen her, and I don't want to. What could it mean that the ghost looks exactly like me? Background. I was around 15 when this happened. I lived in a house with an upper floor and complete basement. The staircase to the second floor has no door at either ends. The staircase to the basement only had a door at the entrance, only on the first floor. Both staircases were L-shaped and had landings separating the turns. The space where the staircases met was as large as 2 door frames smushed together. At the time, my mum was busy working on her computer on the second floor. My dad was running an errand, but I didn't know that piece of info until he got home. The doppelganger was posing as my dad. To avoid confusion, I will refer to it as him in my story. My dad will be Dad. Now that that is out of the way, here is the actual story. I went downstairs to the first floor to probably get some water or a snack. I don't remember. As I approached the last few stairs, I caught him exiting the basement. He was standing on the hardwood floor of the first floor, only a step away from the door. Being the nice daughter I was, I went to say hi instead of doing my task. As I approached him, he went back down the stairs to the basement at a familiar pace. He wasn't rushed or anything like that when he descended the stairs. Him didn't say a single word to me. I was confused but thought nothing of it. I followed him, but I stopped by the door frame. At this point, he had traveled a few steps from the door. Him kept eye contact with me, but angled his body in a way that made sure he wouldn't fall. I was in the process of saying hey to him until I was struck by electricity. This electricity felt raw and alluring, though it felt sour and very wrong as it pulsed throughout my body. Like it didn't belong in this universe, but not in the evil sense. This electricity had only lasted for a second or two before fading. For whatever the reason, I couldn't stop talking. It was like my off switch was broken. I knew that I didn't need to fear him despite that electricity. Maybe that is why I blathered on. Who knows? I certainly didn't. As I continued to talk, our eye contact never broke. Then, I hear my mum yelling down to me. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. I yelled back up, "I'm talking to Dad." After a few moments, I hear my mum walking down to the landing of the staircase leading to the second floor. She told me that Dad was on an errand. Just want to remind you that my eyes remained on him while I talked with my mum. Him eventually reached the landing and had his entire body facing me. Then my brain finally began registering what my mum had said, though that was short-lived when I heard my dad thumping up the stairs to our porch. My mum was walking the rest of the way down and asked me again who I was talking to. Since she was closer, I looked up to her to respond until I heard the doorknob twist. I looked out to the front door, then turned to face my mum and said, "See, I was talking to Dad," or something along those lines. Coincidentally, my dad had just entered the door when my mum had made it to the first floor. The doppelganger was nowhere in sight when I turned my attention back to the landing. My dad looked so confused as to what I said, and my mum stare. Then I quickly went back upstairs, worried about having to explain myself further. That never happened, but I was still very confused about what had just happened. Sometime between my blathering and my conversation with my mum, I was sitting on the floor instead of standing. I also swear that I saw something like worry or surprise register on him after the electricity. It may have also been wishful thinking. I swear to you guys that this is a true story, and I remember it in vivid detail, as you can probably tell by the reading. I also wanted to add that the doppelganger was in a recognizable outfit of a thick, long green and white jersey with faded jeans. My dad wore this outfit often, especially during the winter. My dad was in some sort of long-sleeved red t-shirt and lightly worn jeans. This has never happened before or since, though I would like to say that the doppelganger loves to taunt me from time to time. There are occasions when I hear my parents' voices off in the distance, then being told that they are on some sort of errands. Sadly, I don't have evidence of it being the doppelganger, or a ghost or something else entirely. Have you guys ever come face to face with a doppelganger? So, a few years ago, I had this strange encounter. My wife is a key element in this, so I'm going to describe her just a bit. She has super long black hair that she always kept in a bun. She wore these pajama pants that were patterned like cartoon sky with clouds and all that. She wore a robe that was red and blue horizontal stripes. Also, she doesn't often smile. So I went to bed with my black cat curled up next to me. My wife stayed up and watched TV. I dreamt I was in hospital with Tyrion Lannister and Lord Varys from the Game of Thrones show, and there's a sick man in the bed. I decided to go wait in the car, and while I'm waiting, a tornado comes and I wake up. Now, when I wake up, I notice my wife is lying across my legs, staring at me and smiling, and I thought, WTF is she doing? She's so weird sometimes. Because sometimes she might do weird stuff like that. So I started to tell her about my dream. She's smiling at me the whole time with her head tilted down slightly, ominously, and I suddenly noticed that my cat is gone. I didn't say anything about it, but then my wife says, I put her in leeches, and starts gently tickling my belly with long, sharp nails. I chuckled and said, what? And she said it again, tickling my belly, and I noticed that her robe and pants pattern was swapped, and her hair was down and not in a bun. Then I noticed her smile was just a tad wider than it should be, and I started to become terrified and woke up again, my cat curled up next to me. The strange thing is that I'm not the only one who has encountered this entity. 2 others have also seen this wicked version of my wife in a semi-dreamlike state. I swear to the gods that I was awake during this encounter. Nothing about it felt like a dream. But I woke up a second time. That's never happened to me before. Has anyone else had an encounter like this before? These are 2 eerily similar doppelganger experiences. My earliest encounter occurred around 3 or 4 years ago. I had decided to stay with my aunt. Her house was big, with 3 baths and various rooms. I was on the 2nd floor, alone, when everything happened. So, I was working on a video when my youthful step-aunt appeared. I followed her into her room, excited to show her what I had done with my phone. My younger cousin was also in her arms. Both of them were female. She wasn't in the room when I walked in. I looked behind the door, thinking she was playing a joke on me. Nobody was present. I dashed downstairs to find her, but she claimed she had not gone upstairs. It was a scary experience, so I stayed downstairs. I had the following incident around 2 or 3 years ago. I'm upstairs in a house by myself once more. My family's home wasn't substantial. My elder sister then arrived, bearing our little sister. I was probably too lazy to fetch something, so I called her from across the room. Before exiting the room, she walked up to the mirror and remained there still without responding to me. I followed her out of the room as she went at a slow pace. She was nowhere to be found. I dashed downstairs once again, where my elder sister was showering. My younger sister was downstairs too, playing with her toys. I was creeped out once more and stayed downstairs. Numerous parallels between these two situations made them seem like falsehoods and fables. I was alone in a house that belonged to a relative. The people that came upstairs were all women, and one of them was holding a female toddler. Both rooms had a bed with a mirror pointing straight in the direction of the bed. It happened in the afternoon. And if it's any use, here are some things to consider. My aunt kept my grandfather's ashes in a container at my aunt's house. In the second encounter, the room I was in had 2 Santo Nino dolls that looked a lot like Santo Nino de Atocha and Divine Nino. What does all of this mean? One day, in the March of the current year, I was having a pretty common day in school up until I was supposed to have PE. My school is situated in a building that in the past was a shop. Inside, there are 2 staircases, one leading to the upper level of the school, where the teacher's room and most of the classrooms are, and one leading into the basement, where there is the gym, PE teacher's room, one classroom, the dressing room, and a room with tables for table tennis, and another entry into the upper level upstairs. On that day, I was standing near the staircase leading to the basement, and I saw one of the PE teachers talking with a group of other students about activities that they were going to do today. Since my school currently has 3 PE teachers, it's nothing out of the ordinary to see one of them somewhere in the building. This was unusual because the activities he was mentioning were the same ones we did, and by this I mean me and my class, a week or so prior. I shrugged it off with the thought that maybe the group he was talking to did not do them before. To give you a few details about the PE teacher I'm talking about, let's call him L. He wears a pair of blue shoes, blue sports pants, and a sports sweatshirt in the same color. The second thing, not so much out of the normal at the first glance, is the fact that after the conversation I saw L as he was going upstairs, and so I waited for him to return. The bell rang, but he wasn't coming back, so I kept waiting for him. After maybe 15 minutes, a cleaning lady came up to me and asked for whom I was waiting. I told her I'm waiting for Al to return, since I saw him coming upstairs, and he didn't come back. The deputy principal overheard the whole conversation and said to me that they were going to look out for him there. Another few minutes pass, and they come back. What the deputy principal said was the most strange thing I had heard that day. She said that L isn't upstairs and that they can't find him. After a short conversation and some good advice, later I came down to the gym to look for him there, and he was there with the rest of my class. After a short while, the deputy principal comes in and tells L that I was waiting for him upstairs and that I saw him coming into the upper level. He nodded, but the thing is, he claims that he was in the gym the whole time. I know that I saw him, or something looking exactly like him, coming into the upper level of the school that day, and it never came back. Please help me explain this, or debunk what I witnessed that day. I was 11 years old and in 6th grade when this happened. So, in my school, we used to water some plants around our building every afternoon before going home. We had to get those 1-liter containers. We had to go to the garden in the grade 5 building to the water pump. we have to individually go back and forth 3 to 5 times before having tasks done. As me and my classmates were lined up, I told my friend I'll get more containers, just so we can finish up faster. I went back into our building, and as I was picking up containers, I saw my friend come also. We were the only ones there, so I asked her if she wanted to get containers too, but she was just silent. She just continued to walk up the stairs and into our classroom. I tried to follow her up, but stopped in the middle of the stairs. Since I remembered, I had to do some watering. When I came back to the garden, I was surprised to see my friend, the same one I just saw in our building. So I said, "Hey, you got here really fast." Her face just had this confused look. She replied to me that she never went out of the line. I told her what happened, but she just laughed. I didn't really press the topic anymore since I don't like being pushy. To this day, I'm still wondering what could have happened to me if I followed that doppelganger into our classroom. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below. So feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.